Reminder, you can watch now the first hour of the show weekdays when I am in here. And that's at our YouTube channel at the Pulse of an H, our daily poll question on X at the Pulse of an H. We'll let you know in a moment. There's so much going on, and we are packed again. We'll come back to some of the above, including the state issues. Welcome to Wednesday. We are looking at not a bad looking little stretch of weather, not a bad looking day today as we get into our midweek. Hope you're having a good start of it. Now, let me start on the basics. Good morning, all of New Hampshire, especially up in the Lakes region now with extra signal coverage beyond our WEMJ, AM, and FM stations carrying us live this morning all across the Lakes region, but brand new or relatively new 98.3 HD2 if you like the digital clarity stuff. Seacoast of New Hampshire up into York County, Cumberland County up into Maine, Seacoast of New Hampshire, Rochester, Dover, Portsmouth, Hampton, you name it, WTSN AM and FM. And the 107.7 FM, Manchester, Concord. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, worldwide. Play the Pulse of an H. That's all you got to say, Pulse of an H. All right, a lot going on. And I guess we could start. Let's start at home here. We're going to be hearing from some of our regular contributors, as well as my thoughts on that story about the New Hampshire State Library now being taken off the chopping block. It never was going to happen anyway. I'm just pointing out the reality of looking at what you have to cut. There would have been a way to find it to keep it open, but it's just amazing how this works. We'll come back to that. Michael Graham, New Hampshire Journal, talking about a meeting in Peterborough, and it's part of my talking points today, just how angry people are getting. Oh, some people, not a lot of them. Oh my goodness, the anger. And I'm not just talking about the dinglehead that keyed the Tesla Cybertruck up at the Mount Washington Omni Resort, fully on camera, broad daylight. Twin Mountain Police come, and then I know Twin Mountain Police approached the guy. He's a 40-year-old individual from Massachusetts, and fully on camera, and then he's talking to the police like he has no idea what they're talking about. They got the whole thing on video, and it's like the unbelievable. Michael Graham, good morning. But mm, oh well, that yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, yeah. See, I Well, it's a good answer. It's a good answer, Michael. But I what I don't get is I there's some things I did that just doesn't add up. Okay, and what I mean by that is if you look at some of the far left side of the Democrat Party, or I don't know what the term is anymore because I don't know if it's Democrats. They're just liberal, progressive. They're just angry, but they really do, I think most would agree, have kind of an anti-Israel, anti-Semitic point of view. They think the United States has been too strong of an ally to Israel. You saw that on the college campus stuff, more pro, not just Palestinian, but really almost pro Hamas. And yet and they're the same people that will use the swastika or the Hitler term with Elon Musk, including on the Teslas. And yet they're anti-Israel, which basically was almost destroyed. The Jewish people were literally, as a race, were almost destroyed by Adolf Hitler. So to me, that just doesn't really at one and one don't equal two there. It's weird. Anyway, it's just the whole thing. The other thing is Democrats today, like Chris Pappas and Maggie Goodlander, both on my show last week, both respected, I think, by a lot of people. Maggie Goodlander, new to the scene in the second district, but she won rather handily. Some would say a rising star on the Democrat state bench politically. Some would say Chris Pappas is the number one ranked Democrat now, with Jean Shaheen kind of not running again and Maggie Hassan not up for a while. And yet, Pappas, or at least Goodlander, they're getting yelled at too by far left elements in their own party. Like they're not enough Democrats, or they're not willing to what? Kia Tesla, or burn up a Tesla for them? What I don't get, what are they, why are they turning on their own? Look at Chuck Schumer. He can't even have a book tour as one of the ranking, you know, Democrat leader. He's been a very loyal leader to the Democrats, if you will, but because of one vote, they want to rail him out of town too. So what do they want other than basically they're just, I don't know, burn everything up? Yeah. Do the people that were yelling in Peterborough last night know that 8 out of 10 people who work for a living, or I think kind of hold the door open for the person behind them and really wish for success for most people, do they know that 8 out of 10 people really kind of strongly support the fact that men and boys should not be able to play in girls' sports or women's sports? So do they know that or not? Or they care? Yeah. Yeah. Do you notice? Yeah. Well, again, it's the name calling. Yeah. Right. Well, did, did okay, okay, I hear you. I hear you. But did you just speaking of Massachusetts, Governor Healy, did you see how her it was NBC 10, whatever that is now, used to be New England Cable News. They were she was on the hot seat. She's upset at ICE agents again for taking away some illegal migrant criminals. Some of them allegedly raped a young girl, and they let them go last month. And she wants to know where they are. And she's now standing up and fighting ICE for. She's defending a child rapist. What I again? What is she thinking? Again, it's uh, but for like a smart, educated for a smart, educated person, I mean, you can't say that Governor Healy's not well educated. She's had a very successful career, former attorney general. How can she just does she really believe what she believes? We got to run. We got to run. Thank you, Michael. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, guess what? In Maine with Governor Mills and Massachusetts with Governor Healy, if you keep voting the same way, don't ask me what political insanity is. Thank you, Michael. All right. We come back. Our own White House correspondent, John Decker, a little bit later on. We got a packed show for you. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment. All right, good morning. Our own White House correspondent John Decker joining us. More of this national security group chat fallout, and I have a question or two. But we're going to talk about whether or not it was obviously a mistake was made. I think the president and Mike Waltz have addressed that with his staffer to include the Atlantic Monthly editor, whoever he is. But John Decker with an update. What do you think the right outcome here is, John? Or what do you think the likely outcome is? I think the other lesson here, John, too, is sometimes your response, if not accurate, can make a problem worse than the problem. All right, John Decker, thank you, our own White House correspondent. Want to take a moment and welcome back. And I want to. It's so there's so many things happening every day that even on the daily poll question on XJ Dog, which is the pulse of an H on X, it's almost difficult to um, to kind of gauge what to ask because there's so many different things we could ask. And by the way, we're going to hear a report in the 11 o'clock hour. There's so much other noise domestically and locally, and I guess emotion that we don't even talk about the latest between Ukraine, Russia, and the U.S. efforts to really get on the path of ending the war in Ukraine. It's almost like an afterthought. So we'll have more on all the above. But my temptation is J Dog, is to ask a question about this rage against Tesla. And I guess the only way I can ask it, and I'm going to bring up this case in New Hampshire that a lot of people are reacting to. We'll share you the audio in a moment up at the Omni Mount Washington Hotel Resort, where a man on clear video was like right there, just the video right in the parking lot, I guess for security reasons, or someone they just had video of him getting out of his vehicle, looking around, going into his pocket, taking out his keys, and then going down the side of a Tesla Cybertruck that was parked there, and they call it keying, scratching into the paint to damage the property of the vehicle. So it has to be, cost the owner money to send the message that he hates Elon Musk. But this is the Mount Washington Hotel, and I guess the question is, in these incidents of people allegedly, but in this case, it's on video, the same guy. I mean, this you could just a jury couldn't miss it if they had a blindfold on. I mean, it was just him, his pants, his orange pants, his outfit, his hat, and boom, police arrive, and he denies it, but they got him. Do you think people should be arrested? I guess the question on X will put up on the poll, the pulse of an H. Do you think people should be charged and arrested if they physically damage a Tesla? Just going to in New Hampshire. And I kind of want this story to go away because I just think it's nuts. But then people say, "Oh, I kind of understand why people are doing this." I heard this one. I kind of understand why people are doing this. But the question on X is, do you think a person, if they're caught by law enforcement and there's enough evidence, should they be arrested for damaging, whether it's by key, hammer, boots, or Molotov cocktails? Should they be arrested? Yes or no? It will be interesting to gauge. And J Dog will tell us from yesterday our results before I share with you the Mount Washington Omni Resort parking lot audio. What's our results there yesterday, Dog? Right. And as yours truly pointed out yesterday for quite a bit on this, I don't want to rewind the digital streaming and the tapes, but we can. I said this won't happen. The New Hampshire State Library and the Council on the Arts won't be closed. But when you are dealing with a budget and you are looking at things to cut and ways to cut spending when you have to live within your means, like most households do, like most businesses do, and the way governments and state governments should be run. And that's what the legislature, that's what lawmakers, Republican leaders, I'm going to point out, including Kelly Ayotte, the governor, as you look at everything. When you have less money, you look at everything. If you're a household, I got news for you. You look at everything. What groceries can we cut back on? Can we use less electricity because our utility bills are going through the roof? Can we cut our entertainment package or how often we go out to dinner? We look at everything and stuff we don't want to cut. And somehow someone puts out that on the chopping block are the New Hampshire State Library. And I saw this because they could save $5 or $6 million. And I said yesterday on the show, everyone calm down. The state library is not going to close. I don't think lawmakers want it to close. I don't think Governor Kelly Ayotte wants it to close. Okay, so let's just take a chill pill for a moment. And by the way, if they do need to cut some stuff, there are ways to come together as a community, and I'd offer my energy and time through my show and the reach of the show and our listeners and sponsors. We could come up with some money through companies and businesses and corporations in the state and individuals who want to keep the library open. And we could come up with a capital campaign and then responsibly go to the legislature and say, hey, look, here's some revenue. Here's some way that we can augment and actually help you keep the library open. And by the way, the library's hours can be cut to keep it open versus close it. You know, I said yesterday, town halls and town offices for smaller communities, say under 5,000 people, which is a lot of New Hampshire, those property taxpayers, those town offices are not open 8 to 5 or 8 to 4, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. A lot of times they're it's like the Parks and Rec departments, or they'll flex their schedule. So it might be Monday 9 to 2, Tuesday they might be closed, Wednesday 9 to 4, Thursday 9 to 1, Friday, I don't know, 9 to noon. And they're open during the week. They're not closed. So I saw this one coming, but anyway, that's good because I don't think it would have been a good idea to close the library. But let's just share with you the audio because I teased it, and I'll talk about it in the next segment. Why is everyone just so angry? Here we go. Ready? Not Washington. Oh, this is when the police are asking him for his identification. This is here.
No. I don't know what happened. You didn't see that passport? No. Okay. Well, we have one. Okay.
So this is an individual. I mean, I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's the police officer responsibly, calmly asking this individual, broad daylight. If you know the hotel, the parking lot, when you come up the hill is to the left, the guest. And then the big, beautiful Mount Washington hotel's right there on the hill. This individual, they got video of him pulling up into his vehicle, getting out of the passenger side, I believe, but don't hold me to it. We'll go back and look at it. But getting out of the vehicle, looks around, broad daylight. He's wearing, and by the way, tell you, it's interesting. His attire is very distinguishable because he was wearing what I'd call orange pants. Looks like a windbreaker and a white hat. And he basically gets out of his vehicle, looks around. You can see him with his key, and then he walks right alongside. You get video of him keying the Tesla Cybertruck. So he's going down the length of the vehicle with his key digging into the paint. And then he kind of walks away. And then the next thing you see is Twin Mountain Police going up to him responsibly, asking him, if he wants to talk about what they saw. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, I don't know the outcome. The owner of the vehicle has posted something, I guess, of the Tesla saying that the individual's from Massachusetts. And this is happening here. And by the way, the reason why it's a good question to ask on X at the Pulse of an H about, do you think people like this should be charged and arrested if there's evidence that they just, damaged the vehicle? My answer is yes. But because it would happen to me if you and I went into a shopping, parking lot, maybe nothing to do with politics, but just because we didn't like how someone turned in front of us and we took up in middle daylight and we took a hammer and just bashed the windshields in and out and police showed up, I'm sure I'd be charged for just, property damage or some kind of a second degree or, assault on the vehicle or whatever. Um, but the authorities, I think, going into this week have even said here in New Hampshire, they're warning folks out there, I guess Tesla operators, to be aware that there could be incidents where people go and break the law against your vehicle because of their whatever they feel is the right thing to do. We'll come back and talk about what is really going on and what to make of this because I'm just scratching my head. Hey Google, hey Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment. Agnes getting back at it tomorrow, J Dog. You excited? That's right. Who are the key matchups in the basketball tomorrow? Well, so Duke, Florida, is Auburn still there? Any surprises? We're not that far into this. Interesting. And then the women that continues what Friday tomorrow as well, Friday. All right, we'll have more on all of the all the stuff happening, including more on Governor Kelly Ayotte, big bill signing yesterday, sweeping changes to New Hampshire's bail law. I want to take a moment, I really do, and I don't know how many of you news-wise, I posted it on my show page or the page I use mostly all for the show in terms of telling you what's coming up and observations or some news. And I'm looking at other sites, um, including, well, statewide news. I'll just leave it at that. And I'm looking at just looking at a couple to see if I'm seeing it anywhere. I'm looking at this Mount Washington, the Omni Resort story, not because it's that big of a story, but it's so black and white and visual because it's clear video, not in Seattle, not in another state, but here in New Hampshire of an individual intentionally and knowingly and very aware, broad daylight on video, not knowing it was being videotaped in the parking lot of the Mount Washington, the Omni Mount Washington Resort and Hotel, the resort, the Bretton Woods, and going down the length of the Cybertruck Tesla with his key and what they call keying, press, using the key as like a knife to go into the paint of the vehicle as a way of what? Now, I'm not inside the guy's head. Police arrived. You can see the individual, same outfit, getting out of the vehicle, the hat, the windbreaker or the coat, and the orange pants. I guess he's like a, I don't know, 40-year-old man from Massachusetts. And the police talk with him and ask him what's going on. And he acts like he has no idea what they're talking about. They told him that they know what he did. And he still says, I don't know. I don't know. Now, I can't, and I don't want to, believe me, trust me, get into his head of what he was thinking. But he's not alone. He's not alone. And I had a very good call from a listener the other day from J-Dog has to help me out. I think it was Epsom. And we had a good chat, I think, a good conversation live. She called in because I was talking about this Tesla story coming out of the weekend, where in some cities or places like Seattle, and you heard about the Molotov cocktails being used to blow up Teslas at a dealership. I don't know if the people really think that what heaven forbid, what if an employee was walking around the service lot when 2 or 3 of these blew up with the and Molotov cocktails are used in war. Now, arguably, the people doing it may think that they're in war. And they obviously have had a very hard time since the election results of November 5th. They've had a very hard time since the inauguration and the first few months of the Trump administration. And I totally am not a fool or naive to not understand that they're not happy at all with what's happening in Washington or this administration. They're not happy with the way ICE is going around the country and rounding up illegal migrants, especially criminal migrants, and returning them to places like Venezuela, El Salvador. And they are so upset about that, even if it's a gang member, a violent gang member with murder, kidnapping, drug dealing, rape, all kinds of charges. They just don't like it because Trump is rounding up illegal, the ICE, and ICE enforcement, the ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, that they're actually doing this. And there have been stories and cases where, you can look at all the cases, and the board has always been asked about it. If someone who seems to be harmless, here with good intentions, but they might have come here illegally, but they're not like a gang member. College campuses, are they going too far? If a college professor or student was an organizer, under the auspices of pro-Palestinian, even if it was anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and indirectly pro-Hamas, should that person be deported if they're here on a temporary status? So all this immigration stuff, number one, the courts, battling the judges who are trying to stop it. Certainly Elon Musk. I talked a lot this week about how he's sort of replaced those who despise Donald Trump. Sort of the number one despised now is Elon Musk. And then what led to this conversation coming out of the weekend was this seemingly organized, even if it's loosely organized, effort to physically damage Teslas, blow them up, key them, destroy them. I saw some guy who's obviously nuts in broad daylight. I think it was Seattle, but go figure. Why would you be surprised on anything that happens in Seattle? Taking his boots off and going around and using his boots and hitting the back and the hoods of Teslas where he lives. So this rage, and it is rage and anger, primarily targeted now, we'll hurt Elon Musk, we'll hit him where it hurts, we'll hurt his Tesla stock, we'll hurt his money, his net worth, as a way of saying what? Now, you and I all know a lot of this hypocrisy. In other words, the Teslas used to be a status symbol for the far left, people who were very progressive and liberal in their mindset. They felt great with their EV chargers and their Teslas, and they're driving around. It was a status symbol. They were driving around in their towns and cities in a Tesla as a status symbol, making a statement that if you're driving a fossil fuel driven vehicle, you're the problem. I'm the answer. I love my Tesla. Until they started to hate their Tesla because Elon Musk's politics became identified. And now he's hand in hand with Donald Trump going through the federal government. It's another issue that bugs a lot of people on the far left. They love the federal government big and fat. They don't want to see the waste, even though Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer talked about the need to do this a few years back, including with Medicare. Nancy Pelosi's word, a third of Medicare's budget is waste, and we need to cut that if we're going to keep Medicare. But she can say it, but apparently Musk can't expose it. So now they feel that they can go after Elon Musk. And, even if someone gets blown up, they probably think the ends justify the means. But if Elon Musk had never become, Elon Musk supporting Donald Trump in the last election, and he was a liberal entrepreneur, a liberal multi-billionaire, a liberal Elon Musk, they would not be keying and blowing up Teslas right now. So there are people, and you're seeing it right here in New Hampshire, when Maggie Goodlander, a Democrat who's been critical of the Trump administration, just on my show last week, wins the 2nd congressional district, a seat that was held by 6 two-year terms and Custer Democrat. Maggie Goodlander, new to the political scene here, wins out of the gate fairly impressively as a Democrat. Or Chris Pappas in the 1st district, a Democrat, who may, as he said on my show last week live, Chris Pappas, strongly considering a run for the U.S. Senate. I would argue that Pappas is probably the number one ranked Democrat to go for that Senate seat that Jeanne Shaheen is giving up. And Jeanne Shaheen on my show last Thursday. When some of these people who are so angry right now, when they start yelling at Maggie Goodlander, and they are identified voting Democrats, and they start railing and yelling at a meeting in Concord against Maggie Goodlander because she's not enough? What is she not doing? What is Maggie Goodlander not doing that's not good enough for these people who don't like Elon Musk? They can't stand Donald Trump. They don't like what's happening even in sanctuary cities. They don't like the federal cutting in the budget. They don't like anything. What do they want Maggie Goodlander to do differently? And then I guess I wasn't there, but we've heard from reports on my show. One of the people at the meeting, and I think it was Concord with Maggie Goodlander, said, "Are you willing to get arrested for us and go to jail?" So now they want their members of Congress to get arrested and go to jail. So at what point is this rational behavior? At what point is this understandable behavior? Because one would think violence is never acceptable or good. You can be angry, you can be peed off, you can be livid, but there's a line. At what point is this line acceptable or understood? I'm just asking the question. We've seen not one, but two legitimate assassination attempts on Donald Trump. And you look at this environment right now, and you have members of Congress saying on Elon Musk, he needs to be taken down or taken out, whatever her term was. I think she's from Texas. At what point is this line too far? And again, I am not a fool or naive. I understand there are those, and I know, and I consider them friends, who are in the category is they did not vote for Donald Trump. They don't like, and I pointed out the hypocrisy when people say Elon Musk is not elected. Oh, please think before you speak. No, he's not elected. The president was duly elected. He appointed him to head up Doge. Long overdue, looking at the waste of taxpayer spending in Washington, but you can't agree on that. Okay, I'll give you that, but I don't understand it. But they don't even say when he's not elected that the staff members for the United States senators are not elected and they're writing laws and legislation. They're actually writing laws and legislation that lawmakers vote on. They're not elected. But, at what point I can understand your frustration and not being happy. And by the way, you may not realize this, but there were people in the past when elections did not go their way that didn't like what was happening. They weren't happy. And I don't know if a lot of them were running around, you know, damaging a car or something because someone in the administration owned the company. Oh, but again, they're upset. Now, what I don't understand is why, here's my final point on this. Why all of a sudden, why, what are we, March 26th? Why all of a sudden is this anger getting to the point of law breaking and dangerous? Why is the anger boiling right now when we're a couple months in? Everything Trump talked about when he ran and what these people who are keying Teslas don't understand, a lot more people voted for Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. I don't know if they know that. A lot more people voted for Donald Trump, knowing the changes he was going to make, knowing what he was going to do. A lot more people from all different buckets, all different ages, all different ethnicities and financial backgrounds vote. A lot more people voted for Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. And then in his inaugural address, it was very clear, from energy to the borders, from DEI to men and women's sports, he was going to impose changes from the White House. Again, no surprise. And then he brings in Elon Musk and the Doge effort to go through the federal agencies to identify waste of taxpayer funding and, cutting the size of the federal workforce, looking at agencies whose mission, including Department of Education, maybe should be shaken up or not. So this should be a surprise to no one. So why is the anger now all boiling? Is it because Trump's doing it? Is it because the administration is actually doing what they said? And again, not all elections go the way you want. That's why I said after November 5th, when I was hearing from certain bank CEOs, not that I know, but certain regional banks or college presidents were sending out emails to their audiences of employees or students saying there'll be grief counselors available this week if you need to talk with them after the election because of that awful thing that happened that Harris lost. There'll be grief counselors. I said on my show then, and it's a logical question, would there have been grief counselors made available if Kamala Harris and Walz had won and Trump had lost? Would they have been, would businesses and colleges had canceled, say to the employees, you can stay home another day. I mean, they've been remote working for 3 years anyway. You could stay home another day if you need to get over this grief. What? Losing an election? See, to me, grief is getting a bad x-ray. Commentary. All right. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an 8. Shaq, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a few. One thing I also said a few weeks ago when I could see this brewing, where people were just so like, couldn't seem to function, literally function in their daily lives. And I saw this, by the way. I don't want to get too into the weeds here. When I lived in a certain community on the seacoast that begins with P, beautiful city. It might sound like Portsmouth. I saw this like on Halloween. Halloween, $2-3 million homes on side streets, downtown in Portsmouth when the kids are trick or treating instead of like, goblins and ghosts or scary stuff. It was scary stuff to them, I guess, but they would have like Donald Trump, like a mannequin in an orange jumpsuit with his hair hanging from a tree, like a real noose. And they'd have coffins with Nikki Haley's and Ron DeSantis' name with things etched on the coffin, like, hopefully this is where you'll rest in peace soon. Political haters, real haters, like really like consumes their metaphysical beings, blame them for everything, gout, cervical disc alignment problems, migraines, really to the point. And I said to these people that can't deal with reality, politically speaking, at an election, I said, why don't you put your name on a ballot and run for office instead of consumed with hatred of Donald Trump or Elon Musk? Why don't you tell what you want to do, how you want to deal with immigration or the economy? Why don't you make a run? Put your name on a ballot if you're that upset. Seriously, if you're teaching college and you're telling your kids all this stuff, why don't you put your name on a ballot and run for office? Some commentary. Back on the Pulse of an H in a moment.